Okay, with screenwriter Clifford Evan, delivered was the screenplay that we showcased at our Sci-Fi Fantasy Film Festival. We're doing this on a Saturday night. Where are you? What city are you in right now?
Right outside New York City.
Okay, so it's 10 o'clock for both of us then. I'm in Toronto. So
Oh, you're in Toronto. Oh, I was just there
so it's
two
we're
months
doing this
ago.
on Saturday night. We're cool guys.
We were real cool. Actually, there's
So
nothing cooler.
so I heard that you were telling me that this screenplay, this award-winning screenplay is based on a novel. You're originally a novel of yours?
Yes, it was originally released in 2013, and then it was out of print, and now it's being re-released. I just signed a contract for it for a series, as a book series. So the original novel is called Delivered, but I think it's going to get re-released. At least this is what the publisher is saying, under the title of Death Never Lived. And then the pilot script that won the award, is called Dream Girl, and the second book in the series is going to be Dream Girl. But it's all tied in together.
So this is a kind of like a sci-fi but supernatural kind of a thriller comedy.
Mm.
There's some violence, there's some romance, and it's set in Florida, right? Like kind of has that kind of Florida vibe to it.
Yeah, it's set in South Florida, and when I pitch it, I call it a supernatural thriller, but I also pitch it as genre bending because, like you said, there's a little bit of criminality.
Yeah.
There's certainly romance. There's certainly the whole South Florida thing going on, like you were saying. But really, at the heart of the story is a story of self actualization. So, the main character, the protagonist, who's a young kid who works in a pizzeria and what's going on is he works for a gambling ring, but he's an extraordinarily talented artist.
So
Um,
like the pizza, he's a pizza delivery boy, and he's caught in this criminal enterprise. Like, so how does that come about? It's like a front or
um, it's sort of a front because there's a gambling ring that runs through the back door of the pizzeria, and he has a regular job there too, but he delivers the cash from the pizzeria to the higher ups, but hidden in pizza boxes and things like that.
gotcha. So where did they? It's an artistically gifted pizza delivery boy. That's how you start your your
Nope.
synopsis. Is it based on a true story from of yourself or?
Kinda. It was funny. I was kind of talking to somebody about it, a little ways back, but recently, sort of amidst because it's been kind of getting a lot of awards. It's doing pretty well, and it's right now being considered in Big Apple. It just sort of hit first round, so I got my fingers crossed because that's local and I can go to it.
The film
Um,
festival, Big Apple Film Festival.
Big Apple Film
Yeah.
Festival, exactly. Um, but what happened was when I was in college, I had a job at a pizzeria, and two Italian brothers owned it. They were sort of the only two survivors in the family from World War II. So this is a little ways back. The
Mhm.
oldest and youngest child in the family, and they were gamblers. They used to bet on baseball, basketball, and football,
Okay.
and they would be making their pizzas and they'd have their betting slips. So they were always watching TV and checking their betting slips while they were making pizzas. And
Can you
the
tell me what
sports.
era this was in? Like what decade?
This was probably like late '80s, early '90s.
Okay, so this is in New York City, right? Okay.
No, it was upstate New York, a little bit closer to you.
Okay.
Um, and what happened was, and I mean, I was just there, but I knew that they were gambling. I think they placed one bet for me once, just and the baseball game wound up going like 21 innings. I'm like, I'm never doing that again. But what happened was they had two bookmakers, and then one of the bookmakers had the other one murdered. And it was really scandalous. I mean, this is like kind of a small town, not a small town, but a college town up in upstate New York,
Like what city is this? Syracuse or
near Syracuse in Ithaca.
okay, okay.
And yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And I knew the guy who was in the pizzeria all the time. He was a nice guy. It was, and so that's sort of the first seed of the whole thing. And then various things happened. And I think the script really kind of came about because I had like that whole thing, working, this kid working for this pizzeria, running money and having sort of this father son relationship with the owner. But then he had this girlfriend that disappears, and I couldn't figure out like, okay, so she's got this girlfriend who disappears, but how does that fit into the story? And this isn't when it was still a novel. And then what happened was I was listening to the radio. I used to listen to like Coast to Coast Radio. I don't know if you know that show. It's still on, but
Like that, it's that during the middle of the night. It's all about conspiracy theories
well, yeah, conspiracy theories, but ghosts and
and
any
like psychic kind of mediums and stuff like that. Yeah,
yeah, anything like radio weird, basically.
yeah.
And I
No,
used to
I
listen.
used to work midnights at a grocery store. We used to put it on sometimes. It was a little, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
entertaining.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So one night,
It's still on, by the way. It's still they're still doing it.
it's still out. It was originally with Art Bell, but now it's with George Norrie.
Okay.
And but when it was with Art Bell, it was pretty cool. Like George
Yeah.
Norrie, it's not such a fan, and you can kind of like find just as much weird stuff on podcast than you can on the radio now.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
there's
a little
something
bit.
about traditional radio, right? In the middle of the
It,
night.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
Yeah.
but you can certainly find this stuff, pretty easily. Um, so I so I was listening to it one night, and there was this woman on there, and she had this like amazing voice, this really deep, raspy voice, and she's talking about all this stuff like shields of protection and casting spells and mirror magic and this like all this wild stuff. And then it hit me. It's like, okay, so the girl that disappears, oh, she's a witch, and she's disappeared to protect him because she can see what's going on, you know, in other realms.
Okay.
And that's where the romance comes in too. But she sort of recalibrates his destiny. She makes sure that he's doing his art rather than being in a criminal enterprise, but also recalibrates his destiny to do his art, to do who he's supposed to do, do what he's supposed to do. And so that's where the story of self-actualization comes from as well.
Yeah.
But the thing that was interesting, so I heard her on the radio and I figured out how to tell the story. And then but I didn't know any about this stuff. So I tracked her down and she gave me an interview. I told her what I was doing. I was like, hey, can I talk to you about this? And in like an hour, she gave me like an hour, maybe like 45 minutes. She taught me about at least just a ton of stuff from that realm, which I was able to use, but then also to research and
Okay.
subsequently just learned about, witches and magic. And she's talking about like sympathetic magic, and she's talking about animal familiars, and she's talking about, um, what was, going into dreams. I mean, just all this stuff, like amazing stuff. And she was evidently like her family went back like a dozen generations. She was originally like a Tuscan witch. That's what she would describe herself from back in Italy.
Okay.
And she was just amazing. And she just taught me about that. And she helped me write that book, and I'm still kind of thankful to, she got, I thanked her, in the novel. And I think she died, some years back, but I was sure to thank her because she was invaluable.
Okay. So let's go back to the novel. So that was your first novel that you wrote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's a pretty big, large undertaking. You said it got printed. Now it's going to go So how was that experience writing that novel?
How was the experience? I when I wrote it, it was really the first big thing I wrote, and it started out an earlier version. It was like, I did it in my MFA program,
Okay.
and then it was really a sort of a novella, and it was something kind of different. But I just, I kept at it and sort of figured out, with the whole thing with the witch and all that, I figured out how to do it. And, it didn't get enough legs as I really wanted. But then I guess like during COVID, I guess, I just sort of got in my mind, like, this really would be, it felt like it was right for like Netflix or,
Screenplay. You're going to turn it
yeah,
out to do a screenplay.
yeah, but I knew it was too much to put into just a feature that like streaming, like
Yeah.
a limited series is probably the best place for it. So then I, wrote the pilot and, put together a whole package for it. And that feels like the most natural place. And then I kind of got hooked up with this publisher again. And I thought, okay, well, this will pair well again. Um, with the movie, or with the series package with the
Gotcha.
pilot and everything.
And what was your experience writing screenplays before this one?
I'd written a couple, and I wrote one that I really liked. It's about a woman, the first woman to play basketball in the NBA, which
Hasn't happened yet, right? So,
has not happened yet. But it was kind of a comedy, and I wrote a draft of it, and then I had a connection with someone in the NBA. My mother actually knew David Stern back from, like, they went to high school together.
okay.
The former commissioner.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally. Yeah. So she's from New York then.
my mother, yeah, they're from Teaneck, New Jersey. So
Okay. No,
David
but
Stern
didn't
was
he like his parents own like run some restaurants growing up? I think, and then like,
David's maybe,
yeah.
maybe, but I think what happened was my mother used to tell the story, and here I am giving like story. But David Stern, I think, he was dating a girl like in high school, and she died, and he wound up marrying her sister. That's sort of the story.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yeah. So anyway, so I had this kind of connection and to David Stern, and I wrote him, an email about it, and he didn't really want to get involved, but he's like, oh, contact this guy. He can sort of at least look at it and stuff. And I originally wrote it like she played for the Knicks, and like was
Sure.
played for a gimmick, but then I don't know. That draft wasn't very good, and I sort of wound up working with somebody that I knew back from my MFA days, and we kind of turned it into sort of this kind of really fun rompy thing, and we moved it to New Orleans, and it kind of worked at the time. And it was, I mean, it's a while back. It's when New Orleans, the Hornets were there,
Mhm.
so it had like sort of that whole thing with New Orleans going on, and I think the owner of the team owned strip clubs. He was like a strip club magnate. And so there was like sort of that kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And the guy that I wrote it with worked on Monk,
Okay.
that TV show, and he did a couple episodes of Monk. And I think he was more like, I think he's like the script coordinator, but he wound up doing a couple episodes, and he knew a bunch of people there. And a couple of those guys were a little bit interested, and it was hard to attach someone.
Yeah.
We thought like, oh, like Serena Williams. We were trying to like get Serena because she would sort of fit. She
The
wanted
tennis player?
tennis player because she wanted to act for a while, so that was sort of in our mind to do.
Okay.
And we thought like, oh, Marion Jones, someone who would kind of look the
Well,
part.
she's scandalized now, right? But
And she
yeah.
was scandalized. I think she
Yeah.
kind of got scandalized right in the midst of us writing it.
Yeah.
But she was a basketball player too.
Okay.
But then it was interesting, it sort of kind of fell by the wayside. Now it's good. It's a good story, but it's a little dated, just in terms of like the way athletes are now,
Yeah.
and we've talked about sort of revisiting it. And,
Well, it's
but
an
what was
interesting thing because the WNBA is so popular now, right?
exactly.
So would they even want that? So like you know what I mean? Like it would be I don't know, it would be because there's that theory that there could be a professional like female hockey player who could play goalie, right? Or a pitcher. They had a TV series about the pitcher,
The
the
pitcher and then the
pitcher,
kicker, right? I
right?
think it was a college woman who was a kicker for,
Yeah, kicker in the NFL, right? There was a
that's
movie
right.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or a college kicker. Maybe,
College, yeah, it was like it wasn't the main plot, but it was part like wasn't it some
mhm.
supermodel? She was the kicker or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think actually in college, like in real life, there was a kicker.
Oh, was there? Okay.
Yeah. So there's a few things like that. And then it kind of seemed like, sort of just culturally, the script was like a little bit before, like ahead of the curve in some ways,
Yeah.
and some of the things it was talking about. So it would sort of be interesting, like if it ever kind of, got around to modernizing it, because I think it would do well. It's really
Did
funny,
she fall in love with one of the players on her team?
I'm sorry, say again.
Did she fall in love with one of the players on their team?
No, but it's kind of funny. She's actually, so there's like part of the story is she's married, but once she gets into the league, it's like really problematic for her
Sure.
marriage. And her husband's like a TV chef. So they both have their careers, but their careers are taking them in different directions. But when she first comes on the team, no one wants to talk to her. I mean,
Yeah.
she's just a complete outcast. But there's one guy on the team who's like totally got the hots for her, And so she, she's just ready to leave the team, and she, I think the scene, the pivotal scene, is I guess kind of at the halfway point of the script. Like she's about they want nothing to do with her, and she wants to leave, but then she basically, can I use bad language
Yeah,
on
go
this?
ahead.
Yeah, it's like they're not paying attention to her, and it's like at practice, and she's like, hey, and no one's paying attention to her, and she's like, hey, I want to talk to you, you're my, and then finally she throws a basketball at him. She's like, hey, motherfuckers,
Yeah,
and she says, all right, you guys want me off the team? Let's make a bet, a 2-on-2, anyone I pick, and your two best,
yeah,
and whoever win, if I win, I make, I run practice today and I'm on the team. If I lose, I walk away, no hard feelings. And the guy she chooses is the one who's in love with her, who
okay,
wants her. And she sort of uses that and to motivate him. And he's also like the power forward. So he's like just bouncing the other guys around. And, of course they win. And from there, she sort of earns that, because in her opening press conference, when this happens, this is what she said. She's like, I she's like, what do you want? They ask her, what do you want to accomplish? She's like, I want respect. So that's the first real respect is in that scene. And then she kind of wins over the coach. And then the guy whose job who he thinks she's taken her job, he's better at another position because of her, little things like that kind of
yeah.
happen. And
It could happen. Like
yeah, yeah.
in today, because today's NBA is very much like it's a one trick pony. If you can shoot the three in the corner, and you don't have to go in the paint, you don't have to play defense, you can kind of be in the NBA.
It,
So
it,
if you get a female who can just practice shooting threes and then becomes good at it, she can be in the NBA, I guess, right?
I guess so. And she, we
Yeah,
all, we kind of justify it that she was like a track star and she's,
sure.
she's tall and,
Yeah.
like but she's got game smarts.
Yeah.
She's really
Well,
smart.
you can't like drive to the basket if you're female. Not to be sexist, but
Yeah, yeah,
you're gonna get, you know what I mean? It's not you're not gonna last very long.
exactly. And
Yeah.
but she makes the other guys better.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like what happens. And eventually they all love her because she makes them all better.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's funny, she has like this pregame ritual, or no, I'm not pregame, postgame ritual. She goes to like the spa, and at first they find out about it and they all make fun of her, but then by the end they're all at the spa after the game, getting whatever
So
self care.
so back to just want to segue back to delivered because
Yeah.
what stands the script out, what makes the script stand out from the pack, I guess you can call it, is that there's a nice tone to it.
Mm,
And we talked about
thank
the
you.
genres, we talked about the rhythm, but it's kind of a lot going on, but it kind of works as a tone wise. Like on paper, right? Who knows what's going to happen and when it gets adapted? But hopefully the essence is still there because there's something original to it. You're like you said, you're throwing kind of like all these genres in a recipe, but it seems to really work. And we care
Yeah.
about this guy too, right? So
Well, thank you. And it's like a lot of different things that I'm interested in. And the other thing that I guess I was always cognizant of, and even when I'm writing fiction, it's like Florida. I lived there for a while, and I'm intrigued by the place. I can't ever live there again. But there's something, like it's like these big moons, and it's like lush, and it's just sort of weird. And I kind of wanted to make Florida a character, and maybe in some ways that's kind of ties it
yeah,
together. This is sort of this weird. There's, it's kind of this. It's just this kind of weird, unique place, and a little bit violent, but a little bit sexy, and a little bit, with the moon and stuff, and a little bit mystical. It's just a lot of different things happening, and I think maybe Florida itself, or South Florida, it's not even all of, because Florida is just huge
yeah.
and so different in different areas. But South Florida has just got this like a tone and an energy. It's lush and it's sexy and it's a little bit mysterious, and a lot of mysterious people running around there. They just kind of wind up there and from all over the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Just,
People kind of navigate there, right? A
yeah.
lot of Canadians go there, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. When I lived there, and actually when I first moved down there, I lived on Hollywood, like on Hollywood, and in my mind, it's sort of a fictitious Hollywood beach. And in the wintertime, there was Canadians all over the place in Hollywood
Yeah.
Beach, and I think still there, mostly from Quebec. You see all those Quebec license plates, and there are a lot of the stores. People would be speaking French in the stores, so it was had that kind of going on. And I had this friend who worked at a pizzeria there, right on that little strip. There's like this. I don't know if you know Hollywood Beach. It's a really kind of neat, unique area. With It has like this big promenade that's probably like a mile long with like restaurants and
Yeah.
hotels and all these weird little bungalows. And so in my mind, the story or the pizzeria is on like a fictitious version of that strip. And it's beautiful. The palm trees growing out of the sand, and all the things that happen in the script kind of happen like there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then so now you're like so you just have the pilot, right? You don't you like do you have blueprints of the other episodes or
I do. I have everything kind of sketched out. It's really from the original novel.
yeah,
Um, each episode is probably a condensation of maybe three chapters, because the novel is in three parts: um, stars, sun, and moon.
okay,
And so it's kind of built in. It has sort of a three-act structure to begin with, but obviously would take place over. I think it's conceived as like 10 episodes.
gotcha.
Could it go on once it gets really popular? Sure. I mean,
Yeah,
anything could.
that's
That's
the good problem to have, right? So
exactly like what they did to Handmaid's Tale. Um,
was
you
that
know,
supposed to be only 1 year?
I don't know if it was supposed to be 1 year, but the first year was the novel. I
The
don't know if you
novel,
ever,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
the Atwood novel, and it's just
That's a show
it,
that died on the vine a little bit. Like it
yeah,
was so good and then all of a sudden nobody watches it anymore.
because they just try to stretch it out. It was so
Yeah.
successful for a while, but really they could have done it in 2 seasons, maybe three,
Yeah.
but the first season was just so great and so close to the novel. And I remember thinking, wow, they've just in terms of how they designed, it was like it sort of mirrored my imagination. I had never experienced that before. Like the house where they lived in, and just the city, and just the whole design of the production was like right out of my imagination from reading the novel. And it was
Well,
pretty
I hope it's the
amazing.
same thing with your this novel to screenplay, and I wish you the best success with it. Like I said, it really stands out from the pack. This was like one of those weird no-brainer acceptances from the committee. So
Wow.
obviously,
Well,
you're on your way.
I appreciate it. You never know. You send these things out, and it's funny. I think maybe you asked, because a question about Film Freeway.
Yeah, yeah. In the thing, I did blog interview. I was just reading it.
Yeah, it's like
You always place
I always place in Freeway, so it's like all I use. I mean, I used other ones before, and
like cover. You're on Coverfly too, right?
yeah, and I don't know, on Coverfly doesn't do that well. Film Freeway, everything hits, so I'll just stay there.
I
It's
get well. My quick theory to that is that it's more genre specific, I guess, right?
I don't know. It's and I get they're pretty good about. I mean, I guess Coverfly is too, but they're pretty good in reaching out, and it's sometimes it's a little hard to place because it is so genre bending.
Yeah.
Um, but there's usually things that align pretty well with what it's doing. And I felt like, your festival, sci-fi fantasy, it fits there. It's not perfect. It won an award at a horror. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it depends, I guess, on somebody's own philosophy and how they see the world and the universe. This story could be really frightening for some people, if they're traditional in terms of, you know, religiously traditional or something like that.
Yeah.
This would scare the shit out of them because it's sort of going against probably a lot of those things. So it would be horror in that regard, but it's a little tough to place. But then again, it can place everywhere in some sense too.
Well, I wish you the best of success with the thing. I don't know if you're going to bed right now, but I appreciate your time and doing this tonight.
No, thank you, Matthew. I mean, appreciate just reaching out and the support. because as we know, that the support means everything. And shout outs to you and what you're doing too.
Appreciate it. Well, let's talk again soon then.
Sounds great. Thanks so